Hello everyone, and welcome to the 64th episode of Analyzing Evil, featuring Thanos from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. An ideologue if there ever was one, Thanos is a tortured soul with a warped vision for universal prosperity, a godlike monstrosity hell-bent on revising the universe through murder in order to save it from what he believes to be certain doom. As there are multiple iterations of Thanos throughout the Marvel mythos, this video will be focused solely on the version of him that we're given in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That doesn't mean I won't cover other variations of him in the future, but to keep our coverage of each version of him as cohesive as possible, I'll only be covering one at a time. That being said, in this video, we're going to be primarily looking at the information we're given about Thanos from both Infinity War and Endgame, while we factor in what little information we're given about him in the first Avengers film, as well as the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, none of us could ever hope to achieve the physical might of a being like Thanos, but there's nothing stopping us from outsmarting him, and for that, we'd need an abundance of knowledge. And there's no better tool for you to utilize to learn new things outside of a library than our sponsor for this video, CuriosityStream. We all love taking a deeper dive into the things we're passionate about or interested in, and there's no better way to do that than by watching a documentary on the subject. Enter CuriosityStream, the streaming service dedicated specifically to documentaries. CuriosityStream offers thousands of movies and TV shows from any educational genre you can think of, like history, nature, science, food, technology, travel, and more. And as you can stream CuriosityStream from any device, you can get your documentary fix anytime, anywhere. I'm a big history buff, so I've enjoyed watching programs like Apocalypse, World War II, and Armstrong, but the amount of variety CuriosityStream offers ensures there's something for everybody, even Thanos, who might want to take a break every now and again and settle into what is reality, or life at its limits, some universal and existential topics that ought to get his genocidal motor running. CuriosityStream really is the best place for educational content, and not only that, but you can get all that CuriosityStream has to offer for only $14.99 a year by going to curiositystream.com/thevioli and using the code TheVioli at checkout. Add some smart TV to your smart TV with CuriosityStream. And after you've signed up by going to curiositystream.com/thevioli, feel free to recommend me some of your favorite documentaries down below. And of course, don't forget to use the code TheVioli at checkout. Thank you, CuriosityStream, for sponsoring this video. Now without further ado, let's begin. Thanos, a Titan, was born a prince on the planet Titan to a Lars over 1,000 years ago. Being born a Titan, Thanos was gifted with the impressive power and fortitude of his species, and owing to that, Thanos has quite the imposing physique, one that towers over nearly every character in this series. His face is both powerful and gentle all at once, as he has a chin strong enough to shatter diamonds, but soft eyes that belie his physically menacing persona, eyes that hold a great deal of emotion behind them. He has a body that's broad-shouldered and heavily muscled, with hands big enough to fully grasp the head of a humanoid with room to spare. Though he's an incredibly bulky being, his physique doesn't rule his mannerisms. As though Thanos often displays a degree of savagery when engaging in combat, he's typically measured and calm, his movements not overly ferocious or menacing, making his presence much more civilized and inviting than one would initially assume when first looking at him. His manner of speaking helps with this as well. As though he can be commanding and cold when giving orders to his minions, his everyday speech is reserved and courteous, and we often find him holding conversation in a much more conventional manner than one would expect. Now, not much is known about Thanos' early life, but at some point during his lifetime, his planet and its population would enter a critical phase in their existence, one where overpopulation was causing their resources to deplete faster than they could replenish them. And seeing the failure of his people to contain the destruction of both their planet and their race, Thanos proposed a solution: implement genocide at random across the planet to reduce the population of Titan by half, a concept he believed to be the only viable solution the Titans had left. And a fair one at that, as this particular form of genocide wouldn't target a set group of people, rather the highest official to the lowliest beggar would be considered for execution. Upon hearing this, the elite of Titan feared that Thanos had gone mad and banished Thanos from his homeworld for daring to suggest such a brutal solution to their problem. Not long after, though, Titan would succumb to its ailments, and the population of this once mighty and prosperous planet would fall into civil war, factions emerging across the planet as the remaining Titans scrambled to secure any and all resources left to them. Seeing this as confirmation that he was correct, Thanos deduced that in time, every race and every planet would encounter the same problems his kin faced on Titan, and in order to save the entire universe from what he believed to be certain doom, he vowed to correct the population of every planet in the universe to ensure the continued survival of all sentient life. In order to accomplish this gargantuan task, Thanos began invading planets one by one and decimating half of their population by force, along the way collecting several individuals that would later come to be known as the Children of Thanos, beings he took under his wing and raised himself that would end up becoming his most loyal and trusted servants. Now, as a Titan, Thanos is gifted with an incredibly long lifespan, but after centuries of warfare, Thanos realized that to correct the universe through sheer brute force would take eons. And while he does have a host of trusted minions that could potentially continue his work after his passing, I'm sure Thanos was well aware that even if that were the case, the chances of his forces crumbling after his demise would be far more likely than his vision being made a reality once he was gone. And so, Thanos formulated a new plan, one that would take not eons, but perhaps only a few short years. Use the unlimited power of the 6 Infinity Stones to simply erase half the population of the universe from existence with a snap of his fingers. The only problem he faced now was finding the stones, as well as a way in which he could wield all 6 stones at once to utilize their power. So he recruited ambitious and power-hungry individuals like Loki and Ronan the Accuser to find the stones for him, and he ordered his so-called children to do so as well, having them carve a path of destruction across the galaxy as they operated according to their master's will. And shortly before the events of Infinity War, he pressured Eitri into crafting a gauntlet for him that would allow him to harness the power of the stones. We'll talk more about Thanos' actions in a moment, but first, let's discuss his magnanimous personality and warped beliefs so we can better understand the actions he's taken throughout his lifetime. Thanos is a troubled person. He's incredibly caring and passionate. As though his actions and ideology are quite brutal, his goal of bringing balance to the universe in order to save sentient life is one born out of compassion and mercy. We see Thanos acknowledging that this mission of his is horrific, and he does so several times throughout this series. But what keeps him going is his view that what he's doing is entirely necessary, as well as it being the only suitable course of action to take here. Thanos doesn't want to kill half the population of the universe. Rather, he feels that there's no other option, and no one else in the universe with the will to manifest this terrible truth into reality. And why Thanos thought of this plan in the first place is the greatest flaw in his character. Though Thanos holds this noble desire to help the universe within him, his thought process is mired in the drastic, and that's because Thanos is too logical for his own good. If one approaches this issue logically, it only makes sense that the simplest solution would be to reduce the consumption of resources in order to preserve them, and the simplest and most effective way to accomplish this goal is to reduce consumption by reducing the amount of consumers. This doesn't make Thanos a soulless monster. Rather, it colors him as a tortured soul whose care for living things is warped by his own twisted view of the problems that plague the universe. However, this flaw in his character greatly affects how he interacts with sentient life on a personal level. We've already established that Thanos has a broad sense of concern and compassion for the plight of the universe at large, but on an individual level, he's incredibly callous and seems to have little to no regard for those close to him or those who serve him. He does seem to care about his children, Gamora more so than others, but the few times we see Thanos interacting with them, we see him treating them more like subjects than precious children. He obviously loved and cared for Gamora, and he expresses sadness when he learns of Ebony Maw's death. But you have to take into consideration why these beings are his children in the first place. Thanos, after decimating the homeworlds of each of his children, adopted them as his own to turn them into servants that he could rely on. Servants that would be far more loyal, considering they would develop an emotional and patriarchal connection with him. As we see in Infinity War, Gamora displayed a fearless strength and courage when confronted with Thanos as a child, and I assume that the rest of his children acted in much the same way as Gamora when they came into contact with Thanos. And since Thanos obviously has no reservations about murdering innocents, it stands to reason that he chose these people to be his children because he saw value in them, and not because he felt the need to save these children from the fate he so easily condemns others to. What little affection and favoritism he shows to his children is completely absent when he's interacting with his other minions, and he doesn't seem to care at all when those under his command suffer untimely deaths, which could be explained by his desire to see balance in the universe, making these deaths inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. And I'm sure he views the deaths of his subordinates as necessary sacrifices in service to his goals. However, though he isn't the most benevolent ruler, he does seem to have the ability to attract certain beings to his cause of their own free will, partly because of his intimidating presence, but also because he displays a level of rationality and emotional intelligence that greatly softens his character. He's ruthless and brutal, a man who we see killing many individuals without any semblance of mercy, but when he isn't busy ending lives, Thanos is calm personable, and empathetic, and he even has a sense of humor. And because Thanos is doing what he's doing out of a genuine concern for life in the universe, and not for any desire to rule or to eradicate a hated foe, he's able to draw people to his presence, making him able to even attract a person who's feeling his boot heel against their skull to his cause. I imagine his initial conquests were all accomplished by his own might that, when shown to the vanquished and the weak-willed, rallied countless beings to his cause with his godlike appearance alone, as Thanos is an impressive entity to say the least. But when Thanos, the mighty Titan, stands before you and preaches about salvation, about the finite resources of the universe, and the necessity for tempering current life in order to ensure the successful future of life to come, a person can become enraptured with that message and decide to dedicate their lives to the cause that Thanos has dedicated his own life to. Granted, the followers of Thanos we see in this series seem to be terrifying creatures and sycophantic madmen, but I don't think it's entirely out of the realm of possibility to suggest that there are people who either serve under Thanos or who have experienced one of his corrections that have a deep admiration for the man, as well as a sense of gratitude for the work he's done. But, just like Thanos' actions, this gratitude is misplaced and misguided. Detailing every atrocity that Thanos has ever committed would be rather redundant, as in all likelihood, Thanos has killed people, or at the very least, ordered people to be killed in any way that you can possibly imagine. But contrary to his message of bringing balance to the universe as fairly and as passionately as possible, he tends to err from that sentiment quite a lot, particularly when dealing with his enemies. Now, you can't exactly blame a person for killing people who are trying to kill you, but the fact that Thanos seems to enjoy it, and often does so in a terrifying and brutal way, gives him the distinction of being a sadist to a certain degree. To be fair, he doesn't always kill his enemies, like when he simply incapacitates Mantis and Drax, or when he keeps his word not to kill the rest of the Avengers if Doctor Strange gives him the Time Stone. But when he's afforded the opportunity to kill someone as he pleases, we can see that he prefers to do so brutally, like when he strangles Loki in the opening scene of Infinity War, or when the alternate version of Thanos expresses how he's going to enjoy decimating Earth before he remakes the universe. And he does enjoy torturing people when given the opportunity as well, as we can see when he's torturing Nebula in Infinity War. So while he doesn't purposefully seek out people to inflict pain upon to give him pleasure, we can still say that Thanos enjoys inflicting pain upon others when he's given the opportunity. Now, the thing about Thanos' absolutely horrific plan is that, again, logically, it makes sense. And honestly, if the world, or universe, were in such a desperate state that the only way for life to survive was to cull some of our ranks, Thanos' plan would serve well as a last resort. But that's just the thing. It should be a plan that could be implemented as a last resort, but Thanos is seemingly using it as a first resort, or perhaps a third or fourth. But nonetheless, life isn't at a critical point of no return when Thanos begins killing randomly. Sure, people are starving throughout the universe, and the people of his homeworld were decimated due to this very problem. But it's not as if Thanos is presenting this solution to a dystopian society where children are starving on every street of every planet in the universe. And there are a multitude of different ways that these problems can be solved without resorting to murder. What Thanos is doing here is equivalent to a doctor treating an infection, let's say gout, and telling you that it's probably best you cut off your foot before he even attempts to treat you. Yeah, that solves the problem, but do you think maybe you could give me some medicine first before we go straight for the axe? I can see how Thanos viewed this as the only option prior to him planning to erase life with the Infinity Stones. But as I said, even then, it's not as if life were at some critical point of no return where this was the only option. But after acquiring the stones, there should have been no reason for him to implement this plan any longer. If these stones are essentially the ultimate source of power and energy in the universe, couldn't he do anything he wanted with them? Like, say, doubling all the resources in the universe, instead of having the creatures who consume them. But that's the problem with Thanos. He may have considered this option at some point, but he must have decided that if he did attempt something similar, that it would be inevitable that the population would exceed the amount of resources left in the universe, and Thanos could have seen this as an impermanent solution. However, once the population of the universe is halved, is it not also inevitable that the population will increase again in the future? Maybe the people of the universe learn their lesson and limit the amount of beings in it after Thanos snaps, but it's more than likely that at some point after he corrects the universe, that the population will increase while resources deplete. If anything, all Thanos accomplishes by erasing half the universe is delaying the inevitable. And even when his past self realizes that as long as there are people alive to remember what was, they will always try to undo what he's done, he doesn't stop and think that perhaps killing people is the wrong way to go about this, but instead decides that it would be best if he just murdered everyone and created the universe anew. And this is why Thanos is the Mad Titan. Because he so desperately wants to change the universe for the better and improve the lives of the people in it, but his idea of helping is to destroy in lieu of any real solution, even when he's shown that the death and destruction he brings is the wrong course of action, which is the reason he loses in the end. Because when it comes down to it, Thanos may be right in one way, but wrong in so many others, and people will always fight for their lives and the lives of those they love, especially when the doom predicted by this dark savior is nowhere in sight. Except, he didn't really lose. He won, because a man with a will that can't be broken is destined to either succeed or die trying, and Thanos succeeded. But fortunately for the people of the MCU, the Avengers had their own Deus Ex Machina in the form of time travel, as just like Thanos finding his stones, where there's a will, there's a way. And at this end, who was Thanos? He was a man forced to watch his home crumble and his people perish under the weight of their own needs. A heartbreaking event that would traumatize the young Titan. A trauma that led him to suggesting the most terrifying solution imaginable: genocide. Shunned by his people for this, Thanos would proceed to carve a path of death and destruction across the universe as he attempted to bring it into balance. After centuries of conquest, his attention was brought to the Infinity Stones, his very own Deus Ex Machina that would see the carnage he had unleashed upon the universe completed in record time. A tool that would allow him to carry out his work in the most merciful and dispassionate way possible. Unfortunately for the universe, they had no say whatsoever in this matter, and Thanos decided, against the will of most beings, that they, their families, and their friends would be subject to death at random, all for their supposed own good. Thanos may have been trying to save the universe, and underneath all the horror that is his plan and actions, he might have been a genuinely good person. But Thanos was unable to overcome the brutal logic his mind operated with, and rather than being a savior we could all be grateful for, he transformed himself into a walking conundrum, a man who sought to save life by destroying it, a solution that should only be reserved for the most desperate times. To his credit, once accomplishing his goals, he wanted to live a life of peaceful retirement and let the universe run its course. But while he rested, the universe was left to mourn the losses of friends and family, a people forced to live their lives amidst death and despair. Death and despair that emanated from the heavy footfalls of a man treading a path of evil. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Analyzing Evil, and I hope you've enjoyed. What are your thoughts on Thanos? Did I miss anything? Let me know down below, and leave a suggestion for a villain you'd like to see featured in a future episode while you're at it. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up button, and make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. A big thank you to all of my subscribers, and to my patrons, and a most vile thank you to those whose names you're seeing on screen now. Join the channel's Discord server and Reddit to interact with myself and the community, and follow me on the social media platforms listed below to keep up with the channel. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll be seeing you soon.